There are seasons in life when nothing actually goes wrong, no big fall, no dramatic event, and yet you begin to feel like you are moving more slowly than the person you used to be. Pisces often notices this later than others, not because you are unaware, but because you are used to listening to everyone else, used to trusting what you feel, and used to placing other people's sense of peace above your own clarity. Lately, you may find yourself thinking more than usual, not because you are lost, but because the things you once believed in no longer feel as solid as they did before. If you paused on this video, that isn't random. There is something important waiting to be acknowledged, and the moment you allow yourself to look at it honestly, many old questions begin to find their answers. We begin here. There are moments in life, yes, when nothing big happens, nothing dramatic enough to be called a turning point, and yet, quietly, you begin to feel that you are no longer walking with the same certainty you once had. Pisces is often the last to notice this, not because you lack sensitivity, but because you feel too much. And sometimes emotion becomes a kind of lens, softening everything, blurring the edges, instead of bringing things into focus. Lately, you may have started to notice the smallest moments. A decision that once came easily now asks you to pause a little longer. Words that once brought comfort now leave behind a feeling you can't quite name. Not because someone else has changed that much, but because you are beginning to see the world differently, more slowly, more deeply, with greater care. Pisces is the kind of soul that trusts what lives inside. You trust subtle signals. You trust wordless connections. You believe that when the heart is sincere enough, everything will eventually find its balance. And because of that, you sometimes allow yourself to go further than necessary, to give one more step, to overlook one more sign, just to keep the peace intact. Drifting off course rarely happens in a single moment. It doesn't arrive with noise or flashing warnings. It builds quietly. Through the times you convince yourself that things aren't that serious, that the discomfort will pass, that if you stay patient a little longer, everything will return to how it used to be. And before you realize it, uncertainty becomes familiar territory. Perhaps you placed your trust in an incomplete promise, an unfinished picture, or a version of someone you hoped they would grow into. Or maybe you trusted your own desires more than what was actually unfolding. That doesn't make you wrong. It simply means you live from the heart. And sometimes the heart needs time to gently recalibrate its direction. Pisces often doesn't realize they've drifted until exhaustion sets in. Not exhaustion from doing too much, but from constantly explaining, rationalizing, and soothing the same unanswered questions in your mind. You begin to feel like you're trying to stay balanced on water that is no longer calm, even though, from the outside, everything still appears peaceful. Recognizing this drift is not a moment of judgment. It is a moment of honesty. Honesty with yourself that something no longer fits, even if you can't yet name what it is. Honesty in acknowledging that your intuition is speaking, not to accuse. Yes, but to guide you back to your inner truth. At this stage, there is no need to rush into change or force conclusions. Simply allow yourself to observe. Notice how you feel around certain people, certain work, certain choices. Notice what feels lighter and what quietly weighs on you without a clear reason. It is through this gentle awareness that Pisces begins to reclaim their sense of direction. Drifting is not failure. It is a sign that you have traveled far enough to recognize that something needs adjustment. And when you allow yourself to pause here, to listen more deeply, you are preparing for a new kind of clarity, one that doesn't impose itself, doesn't demand certainty, but is steady enough to guide you back to the truth of who you are. There comes a very particular moment in everyone's life, when everything still seems to be moving along as usual, yet inside, a quiet sense appears that something is about to change. Not a loud change, not something obvious, but a subtle shift, like the air before rain, when the sky hasn't darkened yet, but you instinctively know it's time to pay closer attention. For Pisces, these signs rarely arrive in a direct way. They show up through the smallest details, sometimes so small that, without deep listening, they're easy to miss. A sentence that keeps repeating itself in different situations. A familiar scenario that suddenly draws a different reaction from you. An image, a number, or an old memory unexpectedly resurfacing without any clear logic attached. These repeating details don't ask you to understand them right away. They simply tap gently on your awareness, all like a reminder that something is waiting to be seen more deeply. Pisces often senses these signals before the mind has a chance to step in. You don't always need to explain why they catch your attention. It's enough to notice that they make you pause, even if only for a few seconds. At the same time, you may find yourself experiencing feelings that are difficult to name. Not exactly worry, not entirely unease, more like a quiet inner sensation, similar to a soft wave repeatedly reaching the shore, reminding you that something remains unspoken. Pisces is familiar with trusting this feeling, even when you're unsure where to place it in everyday life. Your intuition right now isn't demanding. It isn't pushing you to act immediately. It simply exists, clear enough that you can't ignore it, yet gentle enough not to frighten you. Like a whispered voice, not arguing, not convincing, only suggesting that it may be time to look more closely at what's happening beneath the surface. In some cases, the signs come through people. An unexpected conversation with an old friend, a stranger, or even a story you happen to overhear. What stands out isn't the content itself, but the feeling it leaves behind. You notice something being touched inside you, as if someone accidentally spoke aloud what you once believed only you knew. Information like this rarely arrives to provide complete answers. It simply opens a door, and Pisces, with emotional depth and a natural ability to connect, often feels clearly when a new door begins to open. You don't need to step through it yet. Just noticing that it exists is enough for now. What matters most is not rushing to assign fixed meaning to these signs. They aren't proof. They aren't conclusions. They are more like pieces slowly appearing, not yet forming a full picture, but enough to let you know that the picture is real. At this stage, Pisces sensitivity becomes a strength. You can notice subtle shifts that others might overlook. When you allow yourself to observe without judgment, to listen without rushing to respond, what once felt unclear begins to take shape in a very natural way. Truth, when it draws near, doesn't need to be forced into the light. It finds its own way forward, through signs just strong enough to be recognized, while still respecting your personal rhythm. And when Pisces realizes they are standing among these signs, it isn't coincidence. It's a gentle invitation to prepare for a clarity that is quietly beginning to form. When the truth begins to draw closer, the first instinct for many people is to pull back. Not because they are weak, but because they learned long ago how to protect themselves by avoiding anything that might disturb their emotional balance. Pisces knows this feeling well. You sense every vibration around you, so opening your heart to something uncertain can feel like standing in a cold wind, unsure whether it will pass quickly or stay longer than you're ready for. Yet truth, in its own quiet way, rarely comes with the intention to hurt. It doesn't arrive to expose mistakes or to declare who was right or wrong. It comes more like early morning light, not harsh, not forceful, simply allowing what was once blurred to slowly come into focus. And when that happens, Pisces may begin to understand that what you went through before was never meaningless. There were seasons when you tried very hard. You tried to hold a relationship together. You tried to keep hope alive. You tried to make things work in the way you believed they should. You gave your time, your emotions, and your patience. And still, the outcome wasn't what you expected. Looking back, you may have asked yourself where you went wrong, but sometimes the issue isn't effort at all. Sometimes the path itself was never meant for you. When truth is met with enough space, it can feel very different from what we imagine. Instead of pain, it brings relief. Relief from constantly convincing yourself that everything would be fine if you just tried a little harder. Relief from believing that things didn't move forward because you weren't good enough, when in reality, they no longer aligned with who you are becoming. Pisces often carries a quiet belief that if you are patient enough, understanding enough, everything will eventually work itself out. That belief grows from compassion, from a desire to preserve connection. But sometimes truth arrives to remind you that letting go of an illusion does not mean abandoning your humanity. It means protecting your emotional honesty, the very core of who you are. As clarity settles in, you may realize that past blockages were never signs of failure. They were signals that a different perspective was needed. Doors that refused to open weren't meant to disappoint you, but to prevent you from entering spaces that could no longer nourish your spirit. And in that moment, truth stops feeling like pain and begins to feel like a quiet guide. What matters most is allowing yourself to receive truth gently. You don't have to face everything at once. You don't need to make immediate decisions. You only need to give yourself time to notice what this new clarity brings. It may begin with emptiness, or it may arrive as a peace you've been searching for longer than you realized. Pisces doesn't need to become hardened to move through this phase. You only need to be a little more honest with yourself. When you allow truth to appear, not as a judgment, but as a gentle explanation, you begin to see that every effort you made had meaning. They led you here, to a moment where the road ahead feels clearer, the weight feels lighter, and your understanding of yourself runs deeper than before. As things begin to grow clearer, little by little, the human instinct is to want closure right away, to get answers, to name what is right and what is wrong, to hold on to a conclusion solid enough to calm the heart. But for Pisces, this phase is more like standing before water that has just begun to settle. If you stir it too soon, everything turns cloudy again. If you wait a little longer, the bottom becomes visible without any effort at all. That's why the first step isn't doing something big. It's slowing your breath. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to rush to explain yourself to anyone. Some truths, while they are still forming, need a quiet enough space to fully reveal themselves. And you deserve that space. You may feel the urge to speak because you've been holding so much inside for so long. But sometimes, speaking too early only drains your energy. Words once released are hard to gather back intact. Observation, on the other hand, offers a different kind of gift. It shows you who remains consistent, who stays vague, who shifts according to convenience, who truly respects your emotions. You don't need to test anyone. You don't need to set traps. Simply watching how things unfold will tell you everything you need to know. Pisces often senses what others try to hide, and because of that, you can be easily influenced by outside voices, especially those that sound reasonable, or advice wrapped in care. During this time, try placing those voices down for a moment, not because you distrust them, but because you need to hear your own again. There is a subtle difference between listening and letting someone else steer your direction. Listening keeps you centered. Being pulled away slowly disconnects you from yourself without you even realizing it. Your intuition doesn't always arrive as a clear answer. Sometimes it shows up as a sense of heaviness or lightness in your chest. A person who makes you feel tense just trying to stay present. A choice that already feels exhausting before it even begins. Or a path that brings calm, even without guarantees. Respect these signals. You don't need to turn them into evidence to convince anyone else. You only need to use them as a compass to gently recalibrate your direction. And then, the most important thing of all is giving yourself time to reconnect with your inner truth. That might look like a few quiet evenings, turning down the noise, walking alone, writing down what you've tried to forget. Or simply sitting still and asking yourself one honest question. Am I holding on to this out of love or fear of losing it? Am I staying because of hope or habit? Am I enduring this out of kindness or because I've forgotten my own worth? These questions are not meant to hurt you. They bring you back home. Because when you return to yourself, you are no longer easily pulled by someone else's rhythm. You begin to recognize what is enough, what is too much, what needs time, and what requires a clear boundary. Clarity in this phase matters more than any major decision. Clarity doesn't mean becoming cold. It is softness with a spine. It is compassion without self-betrayal. It is believing in goodness without turning away from truth. If there is one thing to remember, remember this. You don't need to run. You don't need to fight. That you only need to stand steady in your own awareness. And when you do, everything reveals itself in the most natural way possible. There is a very quiet moment when everything finally settles into its proper place. Not an explosive moment, not a dramatic turning point. Just a morning when you wake up and realize you no longer need to question everything. You no longer try to guess what others are thinking. You no longer have to explain your own emotions to yourself. For Pisces, this moment feels like water that has been rippling for days finally becoming still. When the veil is lifted, the first thing you feel isn't victory, it's relief. A deeply human feeling like setting down a backpack you've been carrying for so long, you didn't even realize how heavy it was. You begin to understand that the doubts you carried were never a sign of weakness. They came from trying to live inside a reality that didn't fully match what you felt deep within. Clarity brings a rare gift. It restores trust in yourself. Pisces often finds it easier to trust others than to trust their own inner sense. But when truth becomes clear enough, you start to notice that the feelings you once pushed aside were always there, waiting for you to become still enough to hear them. And once you do, you no longer need anyone to confirm whether you were right or wrong. The next shift happens in how you look at the past. What once caused regret, what made you question whether you did enough, begins to take on a different meaning. You no longer see those moments as failures, but as necessary lessons, teaching you where your limits truly are. You recognize that you loved as fully as you could, that you gave with sincere intention, and that, on its own, was enough. When self-doubt fades, the need to cling to what no longer fits fades with it. Letting go no longer feels like loss. It feels more like clearing a room so light can move through it again. You don't have to erase memories. You don't have to deny what you felt. You simply allow yourself to move forward without carrying weights that no longer belong to the present. When Pisces sees clearly, something changes. Not hardness, but steadiness. You remain gentle. You remain compassionate. But you no longer trade inner peace to hold on to something that once pulled you off course. The choices ahead carry a different quality now. They are no longer driven by fear. They are no longer shaped by habit. They come from a deeper understanding of who you are. You may move more slowly than before. You may choose silence more often. But this slowness is intentional, not hesitation. This silence is complete, not voiceless. You know where you stand. You know what you need. And you know what no longer requires effort. This steadiness creates a new direction, one that doesn't need noise, yet is strong enough to earn your trust. As this story comes to a close, what matters most is not what you discovered, but that you return to yourself. You didn't lose anything of value, you reclaimed truth, and with it, the right to live in alignment with how you truly feel. If there is one thing to carry with you after this video, let it be permission. Permission to trust your intuition. Permission to move slowly. Permission to choose clarity over familiarity. Because sometimes the greatest transformation isn't something that happens outside of you, but the moment you stop doubting yourself and begin walking forward with calm certainty from within.